I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Okay, that's one thing. The other thing now, the other thing is, I came in and wanted to tell you, now, I heard you say all about the checks and balances and everything you said about this, that, and that. I have a friend who lives in Kensington, who is a retired computer engineer, and she said, and I quote, she said, the way the system is set up now, with this scanning stuff that they have now, she said, I could go into the Board of Elections computer and I could change all the votes in the entire state of New York and nobody would know it and vote for the whatever like that. She said the system is so full of holes.
I mean this with due respect to your friend from Kensington. She has no earthly idea what she's talking about, right? She couldn't do that because all of the county systems are separate, first and foremost, right? I have no access to Nassau's phone numbers, right? I don't have access to Queens' phone numbers.
I'm talking hacking.
Yeah, but what I'm saying to you is that our systems, right, are not on the public site. It's not on a public...
It's an intranet.
Yes, intranet, right?
Intranet.
Until we finish our checks and balances. And when that's done, then there's a verification of the numbers that's done, and then it's moved on to something else, and then it's certified by the commissioner. But unless she's dropping into the ceiling at my warehouse like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, I don't, maybe she's doing that, I don't know. I don't see it, I'll be honest, I just don't.
Well, let me say one thing, and that is my friend, she got in trouble about 5 years ago with the federal government. Because
you're not doing a lot of good work here for your case to be a poll worker right now.
Now, I'm sure she'll never be able to do that work. She was in jail for 18 months. She got caught trying to hack into a computer.
So she can't work. I'm going to say that. She can't.
Is she a registered voter? No, she's not, right?
I don't know what she is, but she got caught.
She's a felon, right?
Trying to get hacked into a computer.
She lives in Kensington. I live in Kensington. I need her signature.
So I am not a computer expert. I'm not. Okay, I'm not going to pretend to be, right? You know,
I'm not. I'm totally illiterate.
That's not my thing. That sounds to me like it's a little bit of a, you know, I'm Irish. We like to tell some tall tales. Maybe she's Irish too. I don't know. But I just, you know, I don't. It's my understanding of the system. There is no wholesale way. It's just not feasibly doable what she's talking about. Because again. My results in Brooklyn, when they come in the door, aren't connected to Manhattan, they're not connected to Queens, they're not connected to the Bronx, they're not connected to Staten Island. They're not connected to anything. They're in my warehouse. I work on Adams Street. The results come to the warehouse, right? I can't see the results from my office, and I'm the boss, right? I can't see them at that point, because they're in the box, right? They're in the computer. They're in the solitary space that is not connected to anything else.
And you're not using the Iowa app from the Democrats.
I mean, for those of you that have spent some time working for the Board of Elections, I think you know the Board of Elections and application don't really go along with that.
Oh, we know that.
The results go to the TV.
So yeah, I can talk through that in a second if anybody's curious. But you've been raising your hand for a long time, and then I'm sorry.
Adam.
She's up.
Okay.
Robin's up, and then I'll come to you.
Okay, just quickly, I mean, there are some things as servers that it's possible that, you know, somebody doesn't have to be on site to hack into it. In other words, you manage to get into the server, which is in the cloud somewhere. That's besides the point. I don't know.
We don't have a cloud.
Rather than the
There's
cloud.
nothing there on the machines
They're not in the cloud.
The results aren't in the cloud.
Fine, I'm not saying, you know, I don't know, just how did you open get the information, how did it send stuff out, how did you get the results?
Because
brought in by people.
By a physical drive?
there's so good. This will lead to what Anna was speaking of. So on election night, right, you see results that go up, you know, pretty quickly. There's actually something, you know, that the board is very proud of. We report results on election night faster than I'd argue any other county in the state of New York. Certainly faster than some states that did this a couple of weeks ago. So that is considered. So every machine has two has 2 points of data, for lack of a better term, right? So that'll go up on election night, and then there's a separate data point which is in NYPD custody until it comes to us. It's then under bipartisan security. That piece of information is loaded up to our internal internet server, and then those numbers are compared with what was reported on election night. And then if there's any discrepancies from that to that, because you will see that sometimes, right? The data stick didn't read correctly, right? You only got a partial. If those numbers don't match, then we actually take ballots out of every machine at that site and we rerun them in the office.
Yeah, that wasn't, excuse me, that wasn't my question, I was just,
No, you're
quickly
fine.
here.
Okay,
Okay,
sorry.
I think you, let's say, try to convince us, and maybe you have, that there is some security and neutrality going to the point where you go to the poll and you put in your vote, your ballot to the point that it gets tabbed and whatever. But there are a lot of other questions that I don't think you've really reassured everybody. I think one of this woman mentioned that she had somebody who tried to change their vote to a Republican, wasn't able to. Why? How did that happen?
Registration.
I know my question.
Registration, not vote.
My registration, I mean, this I do with registration, I know that now that you mentioned there's a 10-to-1 Democrat against Republican, but I know that that's not based on reality because so many, at least in our community, people are encouraged to vote as Democrat even though it's pretty obvious that they're Republican. So in other words, the fact that they're registered Democrats, it's not really a 10-to-1, it's a far, far less than that, but it's become that way because people have this defeatist attitude, we can't win.
I'm taking my Board of Elections hat off for a second and I'm putting my party hat on, right? I have been a Republican activist since before I could vote, okay? The first job I had working on a campaign, I was 14 years old, and I've traveled around this country working for candidates to spread the Republican message and elect Republican candidates, okay? The first thing we need to do, right? First thing anybody does when they have a problem is admit that they have a problem. The Republican Party in New York City has a problem. Okay, we are not doing a good job registering voters and hogging people over to our cause. And simply saying that the numbers can't be true does nothing to help us combat that problem. The registration gap is real, right? We currently have a registration gap. We need to do a better job recruiting Republicans.
What's the registration roll in Brooklyn? A million? You said there's 1.7 million voters?
There's 1.5 million voters.
Right.
It's about a 10-to-1. I'd have to pull the
So it's a
number.
million Democrats,
Just about.
500,000.
What about the states?
Yeah.
Forget about just the county, what about the state?
I mean, if there's more, I can't give you the state numbers, there's more Republicans than Democrats, but it's not nearly.
In New York
Yeah.
State?
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, upstate, no, so there's more Democrats than Republicans in New York State.
Okay.
Obviously, there are a lot of counties across the state where the Republicans outnumber the Democrats
Right.
significantly. So the gap isn't as high. I mean, listen, there's more Republicans than, I'm pretty sure there's more Republicans than Democrats in Staten Island.
No, there's more Democrat registered in Staten Island.
Can I say
than there-
something?
but
I
they-
just checked.
I mean, my point is this, is that we can't, if, as a Republican organization, as people who espouse the Republican values, the answer can't be, I just don't want to believe the numbers, okay? We got to do a better job recruiting people, registering people, and when you talk about the hot issues of the day, right, there is a resonance with those issues today with a lot of middle class, right? Not even middle class, all voters inside the city. I mean, you know,
Can I
the
talk to
Post
this
and the News wouldn't keep bail reform on the front cover if it wasn't selling papers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is an issue, you know, that a lot of people in the Republican Party are talking about. It's in the news every day, right? And there's a lot of average people in this city and in this state that have a problem with it. And
I
that,
just wanted to,
and that getting passed, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, the fundamental fact is the only reason why that bill got passed is because the Republicans lost the majority in the state Senate. Because it never would have happened if you had a Republican majority. So, you know, this goes into, you know, that's, I'm now going to take the Republican hat back on.
I just wanted to talk to this issue, actually.
Yeah.
I think the question is on the equipment, the electronic equipment that's being used.
Mm-hmm.
I know a number of election cycles ago, people were complaining about a company called Ebold. They, D-I-E-B-O-L-D, they're in banking, electronics,
Okay.
and they had
I'm not familiar.
there were certain other states where they were implementing these voting machines by the manufacturer. And I think people are very leery of the technology when they're putting the scan cards in. We know about what happened with certain of the ballots in Florida. I think you mentioned Ohio and other areas. One of the big notable ones was in Minnesota, where somebody found votes during Norm Coleman's election. He was running out. He was beaten by somebody else because they found some ballots in a vehicle, in the trunk of a vehicle somewhere. And I think people don't have confidence in the system when they're able to pull votes. I mean, maybe in another state, maybe not New York State, if you have a 0.25%, 0.5% difference.
Sure.
Oh no, we just found votes in this workers in this particular county, where you might have a 30 or 40,000 vote margin between the candidates. And what I was just mentioning before is some people don't have confidence in some of the electronic devices, even though they're enclosed, there's no,
Listen,
no electronic way to get into them.
there is,
So
this is,
there's no
this is a
confidence
double,
in that.
listen, this is a double-sided point in many ways, right? Because in a lot of ways, people want the convenience of technology when it comes to the voting process, but they don't want any of the risks that goes with that convenience, right? And you can't have everything, right? You know, we were, you know, I can't speak to the specific company you're referring to. We don't use them in New York, so I don't know. As for found ballots that would change the outcome of an election, I'm certainly not aware of any situation where that's ever happened in Brooklyn or New York. You know, that, again.
I guess no one here remembers what happened.
You know, but another thing I want to point out is that until 15 years ago, right, or maybe less actually, right, when we were on the shoops, right, and how many people here know what the shoops were and remember them? Right? Yeah, okay, great. They had no vote tally. There was no paper trail. Whatever the number was at the bottom, it was the hand levers, right? And you'd go and you'd vote and you'd pull the lever, right? And the next person would go and they'd pull the lever.
There's an
Remember poll
analog
workers
meter
back
on the
then,
back.
and remember me, right? And like, you know, remember going to have to go to the polls to get the results and call them in on the payphone outside, right? We're going back now, right? Not from the board, but for the campaigns, right? You open up a lever at the bottom, and it would show you the number in each column, right? The re-canvass process when we had the shoops was you'd go check the machines again and see if the number was still the same, right? There was no paper trail at all, right? And for those of you that have been around for a while, you know that one of the advantages to introducing the scanner was that you got a verifiable, checkable paper record that comes with the election. And again, for the situation that you're talking about, the 30 or 40, right? And this is why I think the New York City system in terms of this is the gold standard. We bust everything open, we take everything out, and we count it in a room full of people. There were cameras there. New York One was camped out in Queens for weeks during the Queens special, right? It is, you know, at the end of the day, you have a piece of paper to look at, right? That's what, if we don't get a right result, or, you know, if there's an issue with a stick, you always have that paper to fall back on. And that paper goes from the poll site to the board under NYPD custody in New York City, right? Cops show up, they take the ballots go to the precinct, the ballots then go from the precinct to our warehouse. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I trust the NYPD to handle that project.
Really?
Menachem.
Oh, sorry.
For all the information, there's interesting. I just checked a couple months ago, the statistic on Queens County, around 1 million registered Democrats, 100,000 registered Republicans.
Queens or Kings?
That's our count.
Kings, okay.
So, if we really want to talk about what to do, as I said at the last meeting, we really have to register people.
That's where it starts.
Even those who are Democrats and feel Republicans, come and check. And on the subject of changing the party, I'm gonna make sure that this, my friend, is gonna send it again, and I'll just follow up to see what's going on.
Can you give me her name, please?
I
Give me her,
can-
yeah, give me her. I have a question about it. He's
Menachem.
been holding his hand up for a while.
To follow up with Daniel Ramos' point, is it lawful for, let's say, me and Glenn to get together, hold a giant press conference and say, Glenn for governor, print out the mailings, and put a website up without even filing anything? Is there anything lawful about, is it okay to do that?
So there is, we don't deal with campaign filings on the county level. I'm gonna be honest with you, so I'm not an expert on that. There are specific requirements for when you reach a threshold of raising money and spending money that requires you to file paperwork with the Campaign Finance Board for the state of New York, okay? And that's a subdivision of the State Board of Elections, right? If we're talking about anything except city council. I cannot tell you what those thresholds are, because that's not something that my office deals with, but they're not egregious. I think it's a couple of $100. Like, I think it's like you spend $250 or $500, or you raise $250 or $500, you're supposed to open up a committee. So if you know, the website was a $15 at GoDaddy.com, right, and somebody already owned the microphone, then I guess you could do that, right? I wouldn't suggest it. I would suggest filing it, because if you're going to run for governor, you're going to need to raise some money. Can't do it for free. But you know, as for the rules and regulations of that, all of that can be found at the state board's website, and they do you know, training classes on that. If you're running for city office, it's a very different process. The city, The city does a matching program. They have their own campaign finance board. It's a whole different process that is a little bit more detailed and in-depth. But they also have people that will walk you through that too. So
To answer your question, the answer is yes, it's legal to do something like that. I'm not a lawyer, but anyway. The
Place one on TV.
Yeah, the problem is that every single penny has to be accounted for. And if you start spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a website, for printing and things like that, then when you do register your committee, are you going to file that expense? And if you do you have records that every single penny came from a U.S. citizen? Because you can't get money from Russia? China?
Now, there's one way to get free publicity. You'll be in handcuffs. And then everyone will know that you were running for office, but not no more.
So, because the reason I'm bringing that up is because Daniel said it's so difficult to get to people for signatures. Hey, if there was a lot of ways to promote myself as a candidate before I even decided to get those signatures, that would be a whole lot easier.
So we need those physical living.
So my best advice, getting signatures is not an easy process. I've been doing it for a while. It's gotten harder over the years. It used to be a lot easier to get people to open the doors. I don't know if it has anything to do with the digital age or what. I used to walk around the neighborhood 15 years ago. I'd knock on the door, they'd open the door, they'd say, hey, how are you, right? Forget that, the Ring cameras are just a killer.
Exactly.
Always there.
Yeah, the second they started putting cameras at the
It's like the Wizard of Oz.
People just are like, busy, go away. So it's not an easy process, but I'm not justifying the process, but I'm going to talk about the justification of the system. It's supposed to show that a percentage of party members agree with you and want to give you their lawn, right? And so that's other states have a system where you pay money when you get on the ballot, right? Florida has that, where you can petition or you can pay, right? New York is a system whereby if you want the line of the of the party, right, you got to get a percentage of those people to say, I agree with you. I think you're a good guy, and I'd like to see you on that line. That is the legitimate reason for why the system exists. Whether or not it's still a relevant system is a question for somebody else.
A quick thing pertaining to that. Other states have what? Where you could send in money to get on?
It entirely depends on the state. They've got.
I want to know if there's something that we could change our system to.
There are some states that have filing fees. There are some states that have, there are advantages and disadvantages to easier ballot access versus more stringent ballot access, right? Having 47 people running for governor, right, would make for a crowded ballot for everybody here, right? And if you go to a single, filing fee system, you very well could see something like that. There are good and bad here. It's just, it's not.
If it's electronic, why can't we just have a website where people can put their things together on there?
Because again, that's not me. The law is written the way the law is written, right? We are a ministerial agency at the board. We follow the law as the law is written. Right now, the law says that you have to submit pieces of paper with signatures that have specific legal language on them in order to qualify for the ballot. I can't do anything. My advice on that is call your legislature.
I want to say, listen, everybody has incredible, we have to deal with we've got to deal with civilizations at its stake. Like Robin, and this woman here, and this woman here, and this man here. We have to come together and start, we have to not just talk about the election, let's talk about what we're going to do now to bring these ideas or to get people to understand what they're voting for in Brooklyn. Let's take back Brooklyn. Robin has some ideas, this woman has some ideas. Let's
Can we stay after this meeting?
Even the other Robin has
we're going to work together to get this out there because we're being overthrown.
Okay, let me take back the floor and say that, I agree with what you're saying, but let's not waste our speaker's time. Let's ask him a question.
We must brainstorm. We have brilliant people.
We can talk about that after the time. Order in the floor for a different reason.
All right, I have an online question. This is one of our people from online. This is why we were live streaming, folks. Michelle Jacobson asks, question, I have an app that I can use to promote voting and our party. Is that legal? Let me see, it is shareable via email, text, social media. So she, I think, wants to know if she creates